Hi. Right. So I finally managed to get on. So tonight I'm going to be talking about how to use this time to your advantage, actually, and instead of merely surviving, how to actually come through this with a better insight into yourself and your patterns, a knowledge about how to manage stress, and basically feeling that if you can get through this, you can get through anything. And I mean, that's the truth, because this is a crazy time. Hi, I see someone's just popped on. Right, so to start off, I just wanted to say that in this time we're in right at the moment, it's completely and absolutely expected that you would have fear and anxiety. This is it's an evolutionary process. It enables us to survive. When we perceive a threat, we're gonna have fear to make us move, to make us respond. Unfortunately, all too often we also freeze. We have a freeze response, which isn't so great for us. And if we suppress our fear and we don't use it positively, it can really deplete us and exhaust us. So I wanted to share tonight how you can acknowledge your fear, let it be there, but manage it in a way that you actually feel empowered. And what you usually will find is that if you don't resist it, it tends to actually ease a whole lot. And for those who have chronic exhaustion and fatigue, this is a time that could either really make or break you. When we're under this amount of stress, then obviously the nervous system is activated, and that is really not great for the adrenals. In my experience, times like these have been times where I become particularly wired and go into my coping mechanisms that exhaust me, and then I somehow make it through, but I'd find that at the end, as things eased, I would just crash. So as soon as I could let go, I'd crash. And I've now realized that pattern, and I've now learned how to be with myself so that I don't go into that wired and busy doing state. So this could be an opportunity to learn how to use this time to recognize your patterns so that you can do it differently. And what Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem in the first place. So for all of those of you who are really battling with stress and anxiety and chronic fatigue and exhaustion, you may have got into a bit of a rut of doing the same things and trying the same things over and over again, and it's not really helping. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is use this time to actually do a bit of investigation into your patterns, and that's what I'd like to help you with today. So firstly, let me introduce myself. So if you haven't come across me in any way before, I'm Kerry Magnus, and I am a holistic psychologist and a BodyTalk practitioner. So I work with a body and mind and spirit approach, because I don't believe that you can understand an experience without looking at all of those aspects. I specialize in the treatment of chronic fatigue and exhaustion, and basically stress and how stress impacts on the physical body. So I help my clients to recognize their stress patterns and their psychological belief systems and their psychological ways of responding that create depletion and exhaustion. So to enable a more conscious way of living and a more empowered way of living. I personally experienced adrenal fatigue. I was diagnosed in 2013, and it was, I kept, even though I had my knowledge that I had, I still went in these cycles of crashing and improving and crashing and improving until 2016. A whole lot of different things happened where I was in this anxiety state like many of us are feeling at this point now. And I realized how deeply my feeling of not being safe in the world played a part in my chronic fatigue. And I started to explore that, and I explored it with my clients as well, and saw that it was very similar to a lot of them too. And I thought, okay, well, what can we do about this? And through my process of working with them, through helping them become more conscious of their patterns, through the work I did with myself, I developed a process that I call From Fatigue to Flow. And this is a process that I now share and with my clients, and I'm writing a book about it as well, because I hope that it will be useful to people. And it has made a massive difference for me. Like just how I'm responding now to this time, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not like I'm a calm Buddha sitting in a cave somewhere. Like, I've certainly had my ups and downs. I'm at home with my kids and my husband. He's working flat out because he does video conferencing, so his business is really needed right now, and so I feel pretty overwhelmed a lot of the time. But I now know what to do. I now recognize the overwhelm. And then I recognize when I'm going into that wired, busy, crazy place to cope with the overwhelm, and then I know what to do to change that pattern. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I see there's 5 of you online. Thank you. That's awesome. Please share with me if you feel comfortable. Have you experienced, or do you experience, chronic fatigue? And perhaps you could also let me know whereabout in the world you are from. So in case I didn't make it obvious, I'm in South Africa. I'm in Cape Town, South Africa. And currently we're in lockdown, which means we can only leave our houses to go to the shops, to go to for any medical emergencies, or to get medical supplies like a pharmacy. And basically, anything that's essential. We're not allowed walking, or we're not allowed taking the crazy kids out the house. So it is pretty rough, but it's been interesting, and I've been using this time to learn a lot more about myself. And I thought I'd really like to share this, a lot of what I've learned in this time with others. So if that feels good, if it feels like that's something you'd like to learn about, then just give me a thumbs up or a heart, and yeah, we can go on with this. To begin, I want to share with you what I call the holding personality. I've written an ebook about this. I'll share the link at the end. I don't want to go into it too much. I don't want this to take too long. But the holding personality is what I've called the patterns that I've noticed in people with chronic fatigue and exhaustion. And now, if you haven't experienced chronic fatigue and exhaustion, stay with me, because this is relevant to anyone who's experiencing stress at this point in time, and who does battle with anxiety and stress. Okay, so what I noticed was in myself and others is that there tends to be, when we're under stress. Hi Mary, thank you. When we're under stress, we go, and I'm going to use myself in this because this is what I noticed in myself as well. And I can still certainly do it. Go into patterns of holding. And these are to make us feel safe, so when we're feeling overwhelmed, there's a general sense of powerlessness that underlies that, and fear. So these patterns that we go into are how we cope, but they're not necessarily good for us. So hear me out. Hi Diane. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, Michigan, United States. All right. So the holding patterns it's all about self-reliance. And I'm going to share how this starts, and then show how it shows up now in this time, how you'll see it showing up. Hopefully, we'll see if it does. So it involves trying to hold it all together. It involves holding high expectations for yourself. It involves holding high expectations for others. It involves perfectionism. It involves control, like really trying to be controlling of how things happen, maybe controlling of other people. It involves rescuing as well, trying to hold everything for everyone else and trying to fix it. It may not be all of these things, by the way. Some of these might show up, some of these might not. The opposite of perfectionism is procrastination. So when the perfectionism is just too damn, when the idea of trying to make it perfect is too difficult, we'll procrastinate. Okay. Also unconscious. So all of this holding, there's certainly nothing wrong with doing, being in control and scheduling and planning and trying to keep things feeling like we're on top of things. But most of the people who go into overwhelm are trying to do this to an excess. And they're not doing it from a place of feeling empowered, they're doing it from a place of fear. And usually there's a sense of urgency and almost a wired feeling behind this. So you may find that you are like trying to schedule. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how it might show up for you now in this current time, is trying to schedule your day and what, if you've got children or family, like how it's going to look and what's going to happen. Just working extra hard, finding things to do, knowing that you could sit down and rest but not being able to, being on edge, being irritable and losing your temper with other people, being very hard on yourself at this time, feeling a sense of just rigidity and tension in your body. You may not be aware of this. This may be so much your default that you don't even know you're doing it, because that's what I was like. So let me know if you recognize any of those in yourself now, or perhaps any other patterns or ways of being that you've observed in yourself since this kind of lockdown and this pandemic has happened. Have there been things you've observed in yourself where you think, gosh, it's interesting that I'm responding this way? So perhaps you can share that in the comments. I know that I started off on the first day of lockdown with the schedule for my children, and I was like all over it, and they were like, no, that's your plan, not our plan. And I had to very quickly surrender. Otherwise, I knew that I was going to push myself into exhaustion, because I was going to resist everything as it was and try and shape it to how I needed to be so I could feel safe. And that's the pattern that often plays out under chronic fatigue. And it is such a default, this holding personality, that it's hard to even recognize you're doing it, because it's just the way you've always done it. So I'm going to go now so firstly, let me also say, I really deeply feel that this time we're in right now and the challenges that we're being faced with are challenges that are enabling us to see ourselves in a different way. So it's literally like it's bringing up that fear and anxiety in such a big way so that we can actually choose to do something differently with it this time. So sometimes my clients probably think I'm a bit strange, but I get a little bit excited when they come in crisis, because I say to them, but this is an opportunity. Let's use this instead of repeating the same patterns. And so when you go back to the holding personality, recognize if that's been present in your life during crises quite a lot, because those are the patterns. And the reason they come about is usually because in childhood, there's a sense of not being emotionally supported and not being emotionally held. And this may be that parents were very loving, but they just didn't have the capacity or the emotional knowledge about how to hold you emotionally. And that was probably because they never experienced it. So they would have maybe tried to shut you down when you experience fear or stress, or try to express a need through anger. But perhaps they just shut down themselves. So there was a sense of abandonment. And essentially then there's a learning within the self, well, if my needs are not being met by other people, then they're obviously not valid, or they're not important, or I'm going crazy. And so we learn then to hold it all together, to put in those coping mechanisms of being self-reliant and not having to depend on anyone else, because then I feel safe in the world. Now, how does this fit into where we're at right now? So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right at the bottom are physiological needs. So for the most part, those are being met. But if you look at food, that's been a big trigger for a lot of people around going into shops and there's no food available because of people stockpiling, and just the idea of having to go out and shop, and how like out there is so scary now. So to some degree, those basic needs are being triggered. Then the second layer in his hierarchy of needs is security. Hi Juliet, nice to see you. So when our security needs are not met, that is massive. Okay, that is basically, it's not just I am safe from criminals or trauma. It is I am safe in the world. I am going to be okay. And many of us are battling to feel that right now, more so than ever, because there's a lack of certainty, and there's a lack of a way to give this meaning. So usually we feel better in times of trauma when we can give it some kind of meaning, and if we can't find any meaning, then we're going to stress more. We're going to feel more powerless. So this time is deeply triggering not having that security, and if you are someone who did not have emotional holding when you were younger because your parents just didn't know how, or perhaps there was actually over trauma in your homes, or lots of change and lots of unpredictability, all of us who have been through that will not have learned how to self-regulate. And we would have put all of these coping mechanisms in place to feel safe and to hold ourselves together, but they're not actually helping us to feel safer. So for those who have chronic fatigue and exhaustion, you're going to find that those behaviors are coming out more at the moment. Perhaps you can let me know. That you are going to go extra, you're going to find that you really go into the doing and the planning and the controlling and the organizing and the being hard on yourself and being hard on others, or expecting everything to fit into a certain way of being, needing to rescue, needing to save. Because essentially what's happened is your inner child is being triggered right now. Okay, this situation, any situation where your brain perceives that you are not safe, is going to trigger your inner child experience of not being safe. And when that experience is triggered, your normal default coping mechanisms are going to be activated. So for those who have chronic fatigue and exhaustion, you're going to have probably been doing this for your whole life. And it's such a default that you don't even recognize it's what you're doing. And the problem is that it's not only exhausting to maintain it, but it's exhausting to also suppress the actual emotion that you're trying to suppress, which is usually that deep sense of overwhelm, powerlessness, and perhaps isolation as well. So in so many of my clients, I'm seeing this inner child experience being re-triggered. Once again, feeling trapped as well, because we don't know who to. Okay, let me just say this, is that when we're in the inner child experience, we then experience the present as if it was the same as then, which was you couldn't rely on caregivers because they didn't have the capacity in one way or another to support you. You didn't have the tools at that time. You didn't have the emotional maturity. So you truly were powerless. And then every time you experience a stressful situation where your brain perceives that you are no longer safe, you're going to feel exactly the same as back then, as if it is the same, as if you are still powerless. But the fact is you're no longer that child anymore. You now have the capacity to reach out for support. You now have the emotional security or emotional maturity that you never had before. And you have the ability to learn tools which no one taught you when you were younger. Because ideally, if our parents had been in an emotionally good space because they had been taught how to hold emotionally, they would have being able to hold us in our anger and our fear and our anxiety and help us to realize that it's okay to have these emotions, that they're valid and important, and that we're not going to fall apart, and that it's okay. And then you would have internalized that so that you could have that experience to situations as you grew up. But obviously that didn't happen. But it's not too late to start doing that now. And that is why this current experience is such a wonderful opportunity to really learn how to do that. And that's what I want to share with you. Hi Jess. Thanks everyone. Just give me a thumbs up if this is making sense for you. Do any of you have any questions? Maybe you could let me know in the comments. So let's see where I am. What the most important thing is that because this is such a strong default, you're not going to recognize it all the time. Unless someone says to you, this is what you do, have you noticed that that's what you're doing? And that's where I find that helping my clients to see that is a good start. Secondly is to recognize what it feels like in your body. So if you feel that in your body and you become familiar with this holding state in your body, then you also start to recognize, oh, okay, I've gone into that inner child place where I'm needing to pull on those old coping mechanisms that are not working anymore, and so I want to now step into using this new way of being. So bear with me for a while. I just want to ask you to close your eyes, and as you just settle in with your breath, I'd like you to think about everything that's happening right now. Just think about the craziness that's going on and the numbers of cases of coronavirus that we see increasing every day, and what's going on in the news, and the food situation, if it's still a situation for you. And just as you think about it, notice where in your body you are having a reaction to this. And this is very likely going to be a contraction. So what I mean is your body's not going to feel expanded and open and light. It's going to feel pulled in and closed and tense. And for many of you, I imagine you're going to feel it in your chest, possibly in your throat, maybe in your back, behind your heart, like almost a shielding around the heart area. And I'm almost willing to bet that this is a default response that you feel many times a day without even knowing that you feel it. Because it is, as I say, it's such a default. So as soon as your brain perceives what feels like a threat to your safety and security, and your inner child is triggered, you're going to go into contraction. And that in itself is exhausting because it prevents the free flow of energy and circulation, nerve supply in your body. And it's hard to hold this tension in our body all the time. Okay. So just noticing what you feel in your body and where you feel it. And for me, I noticed this pain in between my shoulder blades, and this kind of that like shielding I told you about. And I was quite amazed at how often I actually felt it. And the most simple thing I did with it was whenever I felt that, I would just tune into my inner child, put my hand on my heart, and just say, you're okay. Because while you are feeling fear and anxiety and overwhelm, you're never ever going to be back in that situation where you were completely vulnerable and powerless ever again. Because you now have tools, you can reach out, you can ask for support. You're in a very different space. So you can also just say, it's okay that you're feeling this way. It's okay. I know it's scary. I know it's scary. So if you're anything like me, you talk to yourself a lot. Okay? I talk to myself a lot. But what I've been finding recently is my talk has become very hard. Like, Kerry, what are you doing? Or, that's such a stupid thing to say to your children. Or, how could you have done that? This is usually all in relation to my children and my parenting. And I noticed this recently about how that hardness had crept in. And it's all got to do with your protection of that inner child. It's like another part of you that steps in to say, well, if I control everything and make sure that it's done right and I keep it all together and don't mess up, then I'm going to be safe. So this hardness might be something else you notice right now. This hardness on yourself. And every time you do that, you're saying that to your inner child. Every time you shout at yourself, you're shouting at your inner child who is very overwhelmed, very vulnerable, and really just needing acknowledgement at this time. But just to go back, when you notice that you are in overwhelm and in that driving, doing mode, which you may notice either through feeling in your body, the tension, contraction, tightness, or you notice that you're doing those patterns. You notice that you are needing to control everyone, or you're needing things to be a certain way, or you can't put down your work even though you know you need a break, or you're just in general drive and urgency and doing, then you know that your inner child has been triggered and that you have pulled up your coping mechanisms, which are actually just exhausting you. They're not helping you to feel better. Again, I'm not saying that scheduling and planning and organizing is not a bad thing at this time, but to do it from a place of feeling empowered and not from a place of fear. All right. So when you have noticed, hi Catherine, when you have noticed that you are in that place, the one thing you can do is that is recognizing that you now have this adult self versus this child self, and that there is a difference between the two. That the adult self has tools, and I'm going to share more with you, and can ask for support, even though your default's going to be probably to go within and to try and do it all yourself. So think about that one. That's very common. Is this adult self actually is able to care for this part of you that feels so powerless? And that when you're in overwhelm and powerlessness, it's because you feel like you are that child all over again. So connecting and talking to that inner child. You're going to be okay. I know it's hard. And just acknowledging your feelings in a way that they probably were never acknowledged when you were little. And letting yourself know it's okay to have those feelings. All right. What you may find is already doing that is going to bring a sense of release, a sense of relief around what you're feeling. The second thing, the second practice is that I want to run you through a practice. It's like a meditation, which has been extremely powerful for me. And okay, so this is going to take, 15 minutes. So if you feel like it's going to be too long, you could always tune back into the replay. But bear with me if you can, because this is a really grounding and beautiful practice. Just very briefly, I'm going to work with the masculine and feminine energies. Within each of us, we have both masculine and feminine. If you know the energies, you've probably heard of them as feminine being compassionate, intuitive, creative, the holding, emotional, softer energy. And the masculine being the one that's more driven, the more linear, logical, rational, dominant, controlling. That is because in patriarchal society, that type of unconscious masculine has been praised and valued. We're valued for how much we can succeed and achieve and do. And it's what makes us feel strong and in control and important. But when we do life from that masculine place and we disconnect it from the feminine, then we burn ourselves out, because then we're always doing those holding patterns without that connection to that softness and that compassion. So what I did was, when I recognized that, I turned my back on the masculine and I tried to embrace the feminine, but I realized I was missing something still. until I came across the work of Juliet Haynes. And her work is really powerful because she introduces what's called the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and talks about how important it is for each of us to bring those together in our lives. The divine masculine is also about bringing things out into the world. It's about giving clarity and direction, but it's not with that drivenness and that controlling and that dominance. It is more with just this beautiful presence and containment. Now, we would usually internalize our masculine and feminine energies from our parents. So very few of us will have had a father who was just present with us no matter what we were going through and could just hold it. So very few of us have an awareness of that kind of energy. And we have instead learned the more unconscious masculine, which is not connected with the feminine, which is the driving and the doing and the dominating and the holding it all together and being so tense and tight. And very few of us also actually embrace the feminine, because the feminine is seen as quite negative in our patriarchal society. That softness, that intuition, the heart stuff, it's not really valued as much. So when you want to reparent your inner child, which is essentially what needs to happen in order to feel safe in the world, the best way to do it is to bring in this, either your adult self, as I did with Hand on Heart, or you bring in the divine masculine presence and divine feminine, as I'm going to share with you now. Right, so I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to run you through this practice. And I ask you to just make yourself as comfortable as you can. I'm just going to take a sip of water before I start. Tea. And make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes and just bring your awareness to the top of your head. And become conscious of the presence of this divine masculine. So you could imagine it like the sunlight, golden sunlight, all around you, shining its presence on you, illuminating you as you are, just as you are, without judgment. And if you are religious, this could possibly align with some kind of religious figure in your life and the holding of that religious figure. But just bringing in this golden light through the top of the head, breathing it down into your body, right down into your pelvis. And as you continue to breathe in this golden light, feel as if it is surrounding you and holding you in a very safe space, a very safe container. It's like providing this holding container around you. Very much like the banks of a river holding the turbulent waters. You could imagine it like the same feeling as leaning back against the trunk of a tree and just letting go of your weight as you lean back into it. So as you are held with this presence that is with you just as you are, which is with everything you're feeling, just being present with all of that, it gives you permission to let go of what you are holding altogether by yourself. And to help this letting go, when you breathe out, you can relax your jaw and really have a slack, relaxed jaw on the out breath. And the more relaxed your jaw is, the more relaxed your pelvis is going to be, which is going to help you to feel more grounded and more supported. So bringing in this golden light, bringing in this presence and this holding, this safety. If this divine masculine presence had words, it would say, I am with you, and I see you. I see your overwhelm, I see your fear, and I am with you. So it surrounds you and holds you so that you can relax into that feeling of holding and being held, which is an experience some people have very, very seldom actually allowed themselves to do, if we have relied on ourselves for most of our lives, because that's what's helped us to keep safe or to feel capable and in control. And in focusing on your head, as you bring in that golden light into your head, feel as if it is creating a spaciousness and an emptiness in your head. This golden light is being present, this masculine presence is being present with your thoughts. And perhaps it will help you to just get a sense of what's going on with this mind of yours. Like, we all have these narratives and this crazy, the whirling, twirling, revolving stories and these belief systems and these voices. And just bringing in this presence to just acknowledge all of that, and then allowing yourself to breathe it out. So creating a space, an empty spaciousness in the head, with an empty space behind the eyes. Continuing to bring in that golden light, holding you, keeping you safe. And as you empty your head more and more, feel how your whole body begins to also empty and soften. And the more you're softening, the more your pelvis softens. The more you allow yourself to be grounded to the earth, to the mother energy, the divine feminine. So taking that emptiness further down into your heart, bringing that golden light down into your heart, allowing it to relax your shoulders, relaxing the space behind your heart and between your shoulder blades, and obviously the heart space, and feeling that golden light, that masculine presence, just holding a space for everything that you feel. It is not bad, it is not dangerous, it is just what it is. And you're not alone with it, because this holding presence can hold it for you, this masculine energy that supports and holds us all. This is the same driving force that enables us to evolve into our greatest and highest selves in the world. It is constantly present with us. It creates life on earth in unity with the feminine, this masculine energy. So it is constantly with us and guiding us and supporting us. And just feel it holding all that you are feeling in your heart. And feeling that protectiveness as well that comes up, the hardness and the spikiness and the need to do and the need to push. And just hold that. Allow that. You don't hold it, allow it to be held. And as that is held, perhaps you might feel that tightness and protection around the heart just softens a little bit. Just a little bit. Bringing that light through the head and empty heart. Right down into your belly, into your pelvis. And as you breathe into the pelvic space and into the belly, this is where we create from. So that the feminine energy rises up through the root chakra, through the pelvis, and in union with the masculine energy. It's like the sun shining down on the earth, and then the earth creates growth. And the both are necessary for the growth of new life, for the creation of form. And so as the feminine rises up through the root chakra into the pelvis, just allow the whole pelvis to soften. So you are still held and contained by this masculine presence. And as you allow yourself to soften into that, it also gives you even more permission to soften into the earth and to be supported and held by the divine feminine energy, the mother energy. And if she had words, she would say, I've got you. You are safe now. Rest into me. And this energy of the feminine is very loving and compassionate and holds everything that you're feeling. It holds the overwhelm. It holds the fear. So the more you soften your pelvis, the more you soften your belly, still bringing in that golden light, emptying the head, emptying the heart, emptying the belly. So that it's almost as if the masculine and feminine can meet within you. So that the masculine holds everything in this container and is present with everything, acknowledges you and sees your overwhelm, sees your powerlessness. And perhaps now you can also just bring up when I ask you to feel where you feel your overwhelm, just feel that being held right now. And then the feminine energy rises up and loves that, literally just, holds it with compassion and love, because it is loving your inner child. This is loving your tenderness, your vulnerability, and this part of you that feels so very overwhelmed and alone. And just holding that with the presence of the masculine, with his containment and presence, and with the loving, supportive, nourishing energy of the feminine. And constantly bringing that up and holding everything that you feel. And you may find that if you sit down and practice this when you are feeling a particular emotion, and you just hold that emotion, that it actually just drops away, but something else might come up, something else underneath that. For instance, you may find that a lot of you have had anger at this time. And if you just hold that anger, often what you're going to find underneath the anger is fear and vulnerability. And then just sit with that fear and that vulnerability and hold it. And this is so wonderful to give you permission to not have to hold for yourself. To just let your body go into being held. To give yourself permission to feel those emotions without judgment. And you'll usually find that they will drop away. And not only that, but you are also receiving energy. You are literally opening yourself up to receiving life force. I mean, the earth, the mother energy is life force. It nourishes it, it feeds us. But when we have shut ourselves down because we don't feel safe and we feel like we have to be self-reliant, we shut ourselves off from that energy and from that life force. And that's also why we become so very exhausted. And when we allow ourselves to be supported by something greater, we give ourselves permission to rest. And it is in this resting that we replenish ourselves with this life force from the earth, from the mother energy, the feminine. So this is a practice that you can do anytime that you're feeling particularly overwhelmed, and you've perhaps noticed that you're engaged in those patterns again, the holding patterns, however they show up in your life, or you have noticed that you can feel it in your body, the tension. So anytime you do that, you can use this practice, but you can also just do it every day if you can. And what it will do is start to rewire your entire nervous system. And I find that now I can tune into this so quickly when I need to. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just tune into the divine feminine and divine masculine energy, and it really starts to make a difference. And that's why this has been such a game changer for me in terms of giving myself permission to feel and to let go. And then I find that I can go back into life with my children. I can then do my planning, but from a much more flexible, surrendered, softer place. And I can let it all just kind of flow as it needs to flow. So I really encourage you to give this a go, and please, this is going to be posted as a replay. Comment afterwards as well, because you'll be able to, and let me know how it goes. Or send me a personal message and in Facebook, and just let me know how it goes for you. 2 other things that I can recommend at this time is try and avoid social media. It actually drains your energy completely. We lose our center as soon as we're drawn into something on social media. And what you can do is perhaps turn off your notifications and give yourself certain times of the day when you then check, instead of every time it bings, which literally sends a surge of adrenaline through your body, even in a very small way. Okay. And the news also feeds that fear, and then you feel like you want to watch more because of the fear. It's almost as if you believe it. We believe that consuming more news will help the fear, and it creates a bit of a vicious cycle. And then the other tool is gratitude. Just practicing gratitude for what you do have. And it can be quite hard at this time, but for the smallest little things. So the more you focus on gratitude, the more there will to be grateful for. And your brain is going to also believe that life is good. Because your brain, the way we feel in our bodies, our brain takes its cue from our feelings. And so if we can choose what we're going to focus on, and we choose to focus on things to be grateful for, we actually start to embody that and to experience more gratitude in our lives, and then our brain makes more of those pathways the more we do it. So those are a few tools for you to use. I am going to quickly type in, here's my website, and I will be sharing more posts and more, I don't know if that showed up. There you go. Thank you, Janie. Thank you, Teresa. I didn't see your comments. There's my website, and so I'll be sharing more posts and more podcasts as well, and that ebook on the holding self and how that plays out in chronic fatigue, that's on the page, on the landing page. And then I also have a Facebook group. I'm just going to type that in here, and that is for anyone who's experiencing chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue, exhaustion. And it's where I share how to use a psychological, body-mind approach to managing it, and how to empower yourself to heal yourself. All right. Conscious energy. So there you go. I really hope that was valuable, and I really appreciate all of you for taking time out to listen to this. And please share with anyone who needs it, because I think this is such an important time for us to use this time in a positive way, and to come out of it with something good, to come out of it feeling empowered, because I really believe we've been given that opportunity right now. And it can be hard at times to believe that, and it's okay if it's hard sometimes. You're allowed to also feel like it's hard, but we can use this time positively, and to learn more about ourselves, to learn more about what we want in our lives and what we don't want in our lives. And so if you have any questions at all in relation to this, let me know. If you've got anything, have you got any questions now, anyone, that I can answer? Perhaps any topics of interest that you'd like me to share more about? I could maybe do that as well. Diane, Isaiah 41:10, I must go look that up. I actually think someone showed that to me the other day. The guy who delivers my berries, he said something about this time. He showed it to me, and I'm sure it was that verse that you just mentioned. I must go check that out. Thank you for sharing that. Alright, I'm not seeing anything else in the comments, but If any of you have anything that you would like to ask, you can still comment on the replay or send me any messages. And if there's any topics of interest that you'd like me to talk about, I can do that as well. So I'm wishing you all the very, very best at this time, and lots of strength. And you are very powerful, very beautiful people. Please don't forget that. Lots of us have forgotten that. We've forgotten how very, very powerful we actually are, and we are very afraid of our power. But it's an amazing power that we have, and we can use it. We just sometimes need to know how. All right. Take care, everyone. Good night.